Hey guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. And today we are going to talk about Flesh and Blood. And yes, I am going to give an analysis of my thoughts on the discontinuation of the unlimited printing of the Crucible of War booster box, which is part of the Flesh and Blood collectible card game, which is what I am holding up right now. So for those unaware, I did do a video on Flesh and Blood very briefly before on this channel. It was pretty much, I think, almost now, at least a year ago. So I do want to do a follow-up to that particular video where I tell you what my thoughts are of Flesh and Blood in the year 2021 going into 2022. So a lot of you guys are aware, I talk an awful lot on this channel about speculative markets that make up the overall antiques and collectibles trade. And for those of you that have yet to watch a lot of my earlier videos where I go into the fundamentals of how the antiques and collectibles trade operates over the short term versus that of the long term, there are pretty much three markets that pretty much govern the entire antiques and collectibles trade. Whether you collect rare coins, whether you collect vintage vinyl records, whether you collect Magic the Gathering, doesn't matter what you collect. That collecting category fits inside one of those markets. And the three markets are speculative, established, and mature. Obviously, when we look at rare coins, when we look at currency, when we look at antique firearms, there are people that have been throughout time collecting those particular items for literally hundreds, if not thousands of years or more. Few people realize this. If you go all the way back to ancient Rome, there were people in ancient Rome that collected Roman coins for their numismatic beauty. And that's something that people don't really talk an awful lot about today in the year 2021. But that's why when you guys come to me and you say, Sean, I don't like the market for rare coins. That market's going to go to zero. I have to sit there and laugh and say that market will not go to zero because people have been actively pursuing those particular artifacts for thousands of years now. And in the year 2021, the rare coin marketplace is in a massive bull market. I brought this up before in one of my other videos. So where am I going with this? Well, there's a lot of people out there that take issue with the fact that I place Magic the Gathering, I place Pokemon, I place Yu-Gi-Oh!, I place vintage video games, I place graded video games, I place a lot of comic books and vintage toys in the bucket known as speculative markets. There's a lot of people that try to take issue with the fact, Sean, Magic the Gathering came out in 1993, Sean, Pokemon came out in 1997, 1998. How can you put these markets in the speculative bucket? To which I have to state, in the overall antiques and collectibles trade, literally 30 years is nothing. In all honesty, guys, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, if you come across something that's 70, 80 years old, that means very little in the giant scope that makes up the entire antiques and collectibles trade. When we start talking antiques, the simple definition, and I know this is a review for a lot of you out there, simple definition of an antique is an item that's 100 years of age or older. If you live in the United States and you want to study antiques, guess what? You're probably going to go back to 1776 because that's pretty much the founding of the United States. If you're right now watching this video in Europe, if you live in the United Kingdom, if you live in certain other countries in Europe or Japan or China, if you want to study the antiques of that particular locale or region, you can go back thousands of years. And a lot of people don't understand when you look at a market that's only 30 years old compared to a market that's thousands of years old, there is a massive difference in how those markets move and operate on the secondary market overall. Obviously, with Magic the Gathering, with Pokemon, with Yu-Gi-Oh!, with certain video games, comic books, toys being so new to the antiques and collectibles sphere, with a lot of younger people coming into these markets, not understanding how these markets fully work over the short term, over the long term, obviously, there's going to be a lot of speculation and a lot of price volatility in a lot of these more speculative markets. And that's what a lot of the speculators, some of the investors out there that are getting into these markets, that's what they're counting on. For instance, if somebody comes to me and they say, hey, Sean, I want you to appraise my 1928 S $1 Peace Dollar in MS 65 condition, graded by PCGS, CAC stickered. I can do it very easily like that. If you come to me, though, and you say, Sean, I want you to appraise a factory sealed box of Dominaria for Magic the Gathering that just came out in the last few years, I can say, okay, I can praise that very easily too. I just log on to eBay, I log on the TCG player, I look at what current particular items of that same caliber are going for, and I spit out a price, and I can give you an approximate value of that particular booster box. The problem is, because that item is part of a speculative market, there's no guarantee that if you come back a year or two later and I tell you, well, that booster box is worth several $100s, you may look on eBay and you may go, well, Sean, that's wrong. It's selling for $1,000. Or, hey, you know, they found an additional amount of supply that was pushed into the market, and now the price of that booster box dropped all the way to $150. You see what I'm saying? The market for speculative collectibles is much more volatile and speculative than that of antiques. That doesn't mean that price volatility does not exist on the antique side of the trade. Believe me, it does. Prices in certain instances are all over the place. But it's more analytical. There's more rhyme and reason to it versus that of speculative collectibles. Now let's talk about flesh and blood for a little bit here, and let's see how this enters into the equation. Well, obviously, if I upset the Timmies, the Kimmies, and the Poindexters by stating that Magic the Gathering, that Pokemon, that Yu-Gi-Oh! Are speculative markets in the overall collectibles trade, and they've been around for almost, in certain instances, 30 years, well, when I look at Flesh and Blood, which just was released literally within the last few years, obviously, this is a highly speculative collectible. I mean, this is literally right under MetaZoo right now in the collectible card game space. And you don't want to hear my commentary on MetaZoo. Well, maybe some of you do. But we're not going to do that in this video. We'll save that for another video that'll probably never get made, though. If you do want to hear my commentary on MetaZoo, let me know in the comment section below, and I will honestly do a video on that for you guys. But what I am saying is Flesh and Blood is extremely speculative at present time. I'm going to put a disclaimer here. If you are looking to invest in this long term, please understand that this is an unproven concept, even in the year 2021, going into 2022. I want to make that very clear. You cannot compare Flesh and Blood to that of Magic the Gathering or Pokemon that have been around for decades. Just like you cannot compare Magic the Gathering and Pokemon, those markets, to that of rare coins, or even comic books, believe it or not. Comic books are a much more stable market overall than that of collectible card games. Collectible card games are too new. That doesn't mean that comic books aren't speculative. Comic books are also considered part of the speculative market in the overall antiques and collectibles trade, with few exceptions. Those exceptions being, like if you have an Action Comics 1, if you have a Detective Comics 27, even a Amazing Fantasy 15, I would put those particular items in the established bucket of the overall trade. Now, with that being said, when Flesh and Blood came out, it really rubbed me the wrong way. And I want to be 100% honest here so that you guys get my full perspective. And I'm sure some of this commentary isn't going to surprise a lot of you out there. I may end up upsetting, like I said, a lot of the Timmies, Kimmies, and Poindexters out there. But most of you guys that watch this channel by now, you know that I speak from a position of logic and not one of bias, usually when I analyze these markets. So why did Flesh and Blood rub me the wrong way when it was produced? Well, if we take our DeLorean time machine and we go back to the year 1993, when Magic the Gathering first came on the scene, Wizards of the Coast was a small upstart company that literally was trying to release this collectible card game that they didn't know whether or not it would take off. They didn't even know if they would have enough money coming in to produce either a follow-up set or an expansion set to the original game. The company took on a lot of risk. And when the company first produced the original edition of Magic the Gathering, we all know it was called the Alpha Edition. That wasn't done by accident, guys. They called it Alpha Edition because they released the cards into the market. And why they released those cards into the market, they were literally test marketing the product, meaning they were looking at the production run of that particular item. They were getting feedback from customers, retailers, dealers, and the like. And then, if it was justified, they were going to do a subsequent printing so that more people could be exposed to Magic the Gathering. But there was no guarantee that that was going to happen. So they released the Alpha Edition in small quantities. They play tested it. They marketed it. Feedback came in. Then they released the second printing of Magic the Gathering because they said, okay, we can probably sell this. We're doing okay. We still have money to burn. We're not going bankrupt yet. Let's put out the beta edition. So they launched the beta edition. They pushed it out. They upped the print run a little bit from that of the Alpha Edition, and they see how it did. Well, the beta edition did pretty well. So they said, okay, we're going to make another design change to the overall cards, and we're going to come out with the limited edition. Now, this was at a point where the company Wizards of the Coast says, you know what? I think we got something here. Let's see how this sells. Maybe we can keep going with this particular product. So they released the unlimited edition, of course. It sold very well. And then they went to work on the expansion sets, Arabian Nights, Antiquities. Then came the revised edition. Now, why am I telling you all this? Because my problem was, when Flesh and Blood came out of the gate, what did they do? They released an Alpha Edition in limited quantities, of course. Then they released a beta edition of a lot of these earlier booster boxes. Then they came out with, wait for it, not creative at all, the unlimited edition. And in my opinion, it just rubbed me the wrong way. I get that the company that makes Flesh and Blood is not a major conglomerate like right now. Obviously, Hasbro owns Wizards of the Coast. They have billions of dollars at their disposal. Let's be realistic here. Hasbro is a well-known international toy company. So my problem is, when Magic the Gathering did this in 1993, it was more organic. It was, we don't know how this product's going to do. Let's create a small edition of these first batch of cards. We'll call it the Alpha Edition. Well, then, if it does well, we'll take any feedback, we'll make any changes, and we'll release the beta edition, then the unlimited edition. In the year 2021, if a new collectible card game company is going to come out of the gate and they're going to release an alpha, a beta, an unlimited edition, possibly, who knows, we may get a revised printing of some of these cards. Who knows at this particular point? It rubs a lot of people like me the wrong way because when Magic did it, it was organic. It just feels to me that the company that makes Flesh and Blood is trying to copy the success of Magic the Gathering. And they know by doing this, a lot of the Timmies, Kimmies, and Poindexters will go, wow, they're only releasing a limited run of this Alpha Edition Flesh and Blood booster box. I better go buy it and keep it factory sealed because today in the year 2020, 2021, 2022, we all know what an Alpha Edition box of Magic the Gathering goes for. So it just seems to me that they appealed more to the unsophisticated investor, the speculator out there that wants to buy some of this product and just sit on it. And they were happy to do that because even if you're buying this particular product and you're going to sit on it, you're still giving them your money. You're still taking a risk. They're still making sales out of it. Now, in my assessment, I'm going to be very honest. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point Flesh and Blood tries to come up with a quote-unquote reserve list. Whether or not they call it a reserve list or they call it something else, I'm sure it's coming because it just seems to me like they're copying the same formula that Wizards of the Coast used to make Magic the Gathering a success. And to be fair, back in the early to mid to even late 1990s, we never even knew that Magic the Gathering would survive. There were a lot of times that Magic the Gathering sales were not up to par, where you could honestly assume that at some point the game was going to be discontinued. It's amazing it did survive all these years. So that's something that we have to put in perspective because that is my one complaint over this whole Flesh and Blood hysteria that's starting to erupt where people are going, well, no, Sean, if you would play the game, you would realize it's a great game. I understand that. I'm not mocking the game at all. I've reached out to people. People told me it is an excellent card game if you want to play it. My problem is, though, guys, that they are doing things that are really getting in the way of this being an organic collectible card game that's starting to take off. They are really almost manipulating the secondary market with all these subsequent printings and how they're handling the marketing of this product. And I really want to bring attention to the cold foil singles. You guys know what I mean, those of you that are into this. If you get a cold foil single, if you're opening up a booster box and you come across one, obviously, all of a sudden, they have a lot of value in the secondary market. Why is that? Mass-produced scarcity, guys. Be very careful with stuff like this. Again, I am not knocking the company that makes this particular product from a gameplay perspective. I am sure it is an incredible game. And for the record, I have yet to find time to play it. I'm going to be 100% honest with my viewing audience. I am really talking out of my ass there because I have never sat down and played Flesh and Blood just because my time is extremely limited. I'm just urging you guys to use caution when you look at the secondary market right now. Now, why is it such a controversial thing that the company decided to discontinue the unlimited printing of Crucible of War? Well, again, in my opinion, I honestly don't think they needed to discontinue it. I think they wanted to discontinue it because they knew that the Timmies, Kimmies, and Poindexters would go on Reddit, would release YouTube videos on it, would start talking about it on collecting forums, and guess what would happen? People would come into the secondary market and they would start hoarding factory sealed cases of this. Now, this is where you got to think from a business perspective, guys. If everybody's going to the secondary market and they're buying factory sealed cases of this particular product, all those dealers, all those retailers that are carrying this product, they're making bank right now. They're going to take some of that money and they're going to go back to Flesh and Blood and they're going to go, hey, what's the newest set that you released? We're going to order more of that because now if you discontinue that set, we're going to see a run up in sales on this stuff. And this is where the market makers, the market manipulators, the people that use mass-produced scarcity really take advantage, in my opinion, of the Timmies, the Kimmies, and the Poindexters. There is no rhyme and reason whatsoever that simply because they discontinued this particular printing of this booster box, that this should exponentially rise on value on the secondary market. Now, I already know the Timmies, Kimmies, and Poindexters right now are attacking me. Sean, you're educated in economics. Supply versus demand. Well, here's the problem with that assessment. This market is entirely based on speculation. This is the same problem I have with modern era Pokemon collectors, modern era Yu-Gi-Oh collectors, modern era Magic the Gathering collectors, coming into my comment section telling me, you don't understand, Sean. Pokemon is one of the most valuable pop culture franchises of all time. Or, you don't understand, Sean. Magic the Gathering has been going strong for almost 30 years now. All these booster boxes that they're making, even though a lot of people are investing in them and hoarding them in factory sealed condition, that market's going to rise exponentially. And 10, 20, 30 years from now, younger players, this is going to be their golden age. So they're going to go after all these factory sealed booster boxes and they're going to pay a premium for them on the secondary market. And this is where I start to laugh and I say, go study the junk wax era of baseball cards that took place in the late 1980s. Go study comic books, modern era comic books in the 1990s. And I know a lot of you guys don't like those examples. Well, go study what happened with the Star Wars collectible card game or the Star Trek collectible card game. Both of those items were based on a massively popular and very financially successful licensing property. And they failed. Why did that happen, guys? If there's all this pent-up demand and demand is only going to increase. So what am I telling you guys? If you happen to have this booster box, if you happen to want to play the hype, and you want to right now, you want to log on TCG Player, you want to log on eBay, and you want to buy a factory sealed case of this particular booster box, and you want to play the market, and you say, you know what? If Flesh and Blood really catches on, Sean, it is going to go up in value. I will 100% agree with you that if Flesh and Blood becomes a mainstay collectible card game, I'm going to call it out right here, this particular booster box will absolutely go up in value. Just like today in the year 2021, vintage Pokemon booster boxes are worth money on the secondary market. Magic the Gathering booster boxes are worth money in the secondary market. Yes, that is true. The problem is you need to realize that this, number one, has to take off. Number two, there has to be more players, speculators, collectors, and investors coming into this market than leaving. And this particular game is still extremely more speculative than that of Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, and even Yu-Gi-Oh! If you can stomach that risk and you have the money, you're not putting it on a credit card, you're not doing something stupid where you can't afford your school loan payment or your mortgage payment, your rent, whatever you have, and you have the money to buy some of this product, I will gladly admit this may be a good item to speculate on over the short term. I would not be holding this item, though, for years or decades. What I would tell you to do is if you're going to do that, only limit how much you're going to spend on this. Only limit to what you can afford to lose because, again, this is a highly speculative market. This is comparative in certain instances to penny stocks or cryptocurrencies or whatever the hot investment item is right now. That's what this is comparable to. And when the market takes an uptick where you can at least double your money, you get out of it. You let somebody else worry about it. If you happen to be lucky enough, you want to buy 2-3 cases. If that happens, take your money, only keep 1 or 2 booster boxes for the long term if you're going to try to gamble on something like this. Now, I know what you're going to ask me. Well, Sean, how are you playing this? I'm going to be very honest. I actually do own 2 sealed cases of this along with 4 other booster boxes. Now, you got to remember, Flesh and Blood is packed a little bit different than that of Magic the Gathering and Pokemon. There are only 4 booster boxes per case. So I am roughly sitting on 12 booster boxes of Crucible of War, the Unlimited Edition. And I bought them, yes, to speculate on. It's just something I want to see what the market does over the next 6 to 24 months. That is the plan. So if that's something you want to do, you guys often reach out to me and tell me, hey, Sean, you never tell us anything to speculate on. You never show us what you're speculating on. Here is a prime example. But you must understand, you could very easily lose money playing in this particular market. And I want you to understand that. Rudy with Alpha Investments, he did a video on Commander Legends, and I do tend to agree with him. I really think Commander Legends is one of those Magic the Gathering factory seal booster boxes that is, over the short term, now when I say short term, that's 5 years or less, that particular booster box, once it's discontinued, it is going to go up in value. I'm not saying you're going to triple or quadruple your money, but if you guys out there who are looking to play these particular markets, you can do so right now. Just understand, at any given time, the trend can shift. Meaning people can come into this market, people can leave this market, and maybe modern era factory sealed booster boxes from Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Flesh and Blood, they start to stagnate on the secondary market, or, hate to say it, they start to lose value. Understand, if you can assess the risk, this is something viable at present time over the short term. It'll be very interesting to see where the makers of Flesh and Blood take this. If they do some type of reserve list or something crazy like that, expect a video from me to comment on that new development. I'm not saying they're going to go in that direction, but if they do, rest assured, you will see a video from me on that, because I think it's very, very cheesy that they are copying everything that Magic the Gathering has done from back in 1993, not realizing that that was all organic. Even the reserve list. The reserve list for Magic the Gathering was 100% organic. It was never meant to exponentially increase the value of Magic the Gathering cards on the secondary market where anybody back then was thinking, well, in the year 2020 or 2021, there's going to be cards that are going to be third-party graded, and they're going to be selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars. That was not a thing back in the 1990s. Thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I wish you all a good night, and you'll see me soon in another video.